Okay, good evening. This is the February 15th meeting of the regularly scheduled Design Review Board. Would you call the roll and confirm members online, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Kenter? Alan, I think you're muted. Aaron, can you unmute Alan Kenter, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can. Hi, Alan.
Hey.
Mr. Fink?
Here.
Miss Burkett? Okay, Mr. Buck?
Here.
Mr. Vandiver?
Here.
We have a quorum. I would also ask for the people that are online with us to introduce themselves as well.
Hello, this is Sabrina Lee Jones, one of the owners of 113 East Arctic Avenue.
Thank you, Sabrina.
This is Chris Altman, representing for 112 East Huron and 108 East Hudson.
Thank you, Chris. And I believe that's everyone we have on the line.
Okay, thank you folks for attending online, and for also present in the room is Sandy.
Sandy Byers,
Sandy Byers.
Byers Collaborative.
Okay, and of course Ryan, he's the architect, I believe, for your project.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, and we'll move into the agenda. I will stipulate that the Freedom of Information Act requirements have been met with the appropriate publishing of the agenda in advance. Let's, if we can move to approval of previous minutes. Ms. Secretary, you want to start with November 16th minutes and move forward?
Yep. Do we have a motion to approve the November 16 minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second. Okay, any discussion on the November 16th minutes that were distributed to you in preparation for this meeting? Alan, do you have any questions or any discussion?
No,
Okay, Joe, do you have any questions?
No.
Mr. Buck?
No.
Okay, let's call for the motion, please.
Okay. I will call roll. Is that what you'd like me to do?
Please.
Okay, Mr. Kenter?
Yes.
Mr. Fink?
Yes.
Mr. Buck?
Yes.
Mr. Vandiver?
Yes.
Okay, we will now move to the January 25th minutes. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Mr. Kenter?
Yes.
Mr. Fink?
Yes.
Mr. Buck?
Yes.
Mr. Vandiver?
Yes.
The February 3rd meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? I did get a comment from Skip to correct the title. It said agenda instead of minutes, so I made that correction. Any other discussion? All right, Mr. Kenter?
I don't think I was there.
That is true. Thank you. Mr. Fink?
Yes.
Mr. Buck?
Yes.
Mr. Vandiver?
Yes.
Okay, all of the minutes have been approved.
Okay, moving to personal appearances. I assume that would be none really, other than we're going to wait to hear from Sandy when I think we do Ryan's preliminary review.
Correct. I would say that we have no personal appearances. I would like to request the board move the accelerated review from a staff standpoint to the top of the agenda before we get into the 87 Center Street. So
Does that take a motion, or can we just do that?
I believe it takes a motion.
Okay, then I move that we move the accelerated review discussion under new business to the first item of discussion prior to entering into unfinished business.
Second.
All in favor? Or any discussion? I don't think we really need to take a...
I think we're all...
Okay, perfect. So we will start with that accelerated review, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, in preparation for the accelerated review, if you would review the handout items, please, Sabrina, or someone to explain your project. Would appreciate that.
Certainly, as I had mentioned, I am the only owner who was able to join today. We all live remotely from the 113 East Arctic property. But essentially, as owners, what we needed to do was touch up some of the cosmetic cracking that was occurring on our building. And then the paint had faded over, as being a Front Beach property, it does that over 13 years. So we had requested those little cracks in the stucco to be repaired, and then a touch-up of the color to just brighten it up from where it was originally. And essentially, that is it.
Okay, the handout that you submitted, or the read ahead, has a number of pictures of the buildings in question. Can we have a motion to discuss or to approve accelerated review? I'll make a
Motion.
Second, okay, did we already do that?
Looks good, yep.
Okay, so as far as discussion goes, is there any, Alan, do you have any particular comments or discussion items you want to bring up?
Nope, I'm fine.
Mr. Buck?
No, I actually think it looks pretty good, so.
Thank you. We were pleased with it.
Which is the before and after? I don't
So
remember.
the before is
I know,
the-
I tried very
the
hard
yellow
to
and
get
green.
closer
Okay.
to
And the
buildings.
after is now the
Is the
blue and white.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just brighter, isn't it?
Looks nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw those online. Okay, there's no real material changes or anything of that nature, as I understand?
No, there isn't. Everything, the structure, of course, of the building has remained the same. It was just some of those cracks we wanted to take care of before they got worse. And then, of course, it needed a new paint as well.
Okay. There's no further discussion. I'll call a question, call a roll.
Okay, Mr. Kenter,
Yes?
Mr. Fink,
Yes?
Mr. Buck,
Yes.
Mr. Vandiver.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes and accelerated review is approved. Sabrina, you can let your paint contractor know that she can go ahead and have that permit approved, and I'll email you guys
Okay.
in the morning with our permit staff to get that
Lovely.
closed out.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.
You
Good night.
too. Good night.
I think we moved to unfinished business, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's the preliminary review for 87 Center Street. Can I have a motion?
Motion?
All right, second. So we'll open for discussion. I'd just like to open with a few comments if I could. I see the submission that you made, Ryan.
Yep.
I noted there's no updated drawings or anything of this, correct? I mean, there was no changes to that other than the narrative that you provided.
Yeah, I think we just focused on the front elevation because that was the main topic of discussion.
Right, when we did the window discussions and all that. So this then was the updated
That's correct.
view. Alan, you do have a picture of the updated front elevation of the structure, correct?
The red,
Yes, sir.
brown piers, black storefront.
Right.
Okay.
The changes that this reflects, that Ryan accommodated in preparation before, was that he has widened the window to make it a little more actual window size, or lesser window size, and increase the actual minion, or I call it a knee wall bar down below, so it's equal to the barrier, the deck rating, correct. I'll also note that I was under the impression that one of the things we asked you to address, and the reason we didn't approve preliminary review at the last meeting, but we had reconsideration and then we left it because Ryan was going to provide us with additional input. I thought that we had requested that you looked at kind of the options that there might be for the facade. That was the part that is partially covering the gable, which created for some of our discussion, I think, an inconsistent appearance to the front of the building. While I fully recognize that it is zoned for business and residential, I'm also of the opinion, in my recollection, having been a member of the board at the time, is that the approval, and you were a part of that process too, Sandy, the approval of that building was more at the time as a Folly Inn Lodge, if you will. Have we changed the name of that, by the way? Is it now the Folly Hotel?
Hotel Folly.
Hotel Folly, I'm sorry. Okay. And that part of that at the time was that it had that kind of a residential appearance, but it had an appealing view as we came over the bridge, and you saw that now as the first real commercial structure. And it was primarily, until it changed ownerships and then a design desire, as alluded to by Mr. Buck earlier in the earlier meetings, was that we add that commercial aspect to it to include food and beverage down at the lower level, to which all of these drawings pertained, and that's where we had a lot of our discussion. I think that, I don't think you really answered in this submission of a single picture what we were asking for. Now, that's my perspective. I will admit that I've gone back now and looked a little more in detail at the ordinance itself, and I'm sure you probably have too, because that came into question at the last meeting as to really how much were we in compliance with what the ordinance was asking us to do. I fully recognize that the ordinance, and a lot of it, especially in the case of the Design Review Board, is subjective in how we interpret some of those things. Is it a color we like, it's a color we don't like. What do you think? You know, more bright, less bright, that kind of thing. I do recall, and I will defer to Sandy's recollection as part of this, but at the time this structure was built, in 2017, when we approved it as a structure, the gable appearances, with some structural changes, I think we had some plank changes and some window trims and things that, were more subjective in terms of appearance, some of which Alan commented on as an architect as well at that time. I think now that your desire is to change not only the appearance, but the general usage of the building as well, right? It's no longer just a hotel, it's now a hotel with an eatery. I'm not in disagreement with your latitude to do that. That's clearly part of the owner's responsibilities. What I want to hear about, though, is if you could comment on the changes that, from my perspective, and this is just my interpretation of the order, and I can read you the specific things that talk about how it has to be consistent with, it can't be a facade over a structure, added on to make it look like a box, a facade in front of a box. Not that it does, but that it doesn't cover, in my opinion, the original architecture intent of the front of that building. And it's not consistent with the rest of the building. The parapet I'm talking about that just kind of covers up the front of the gable. If you want to elaborate or make whatever presentation on that, I'd appreciate that. And again, I apologize for any lack of understanding on my part, but again, this is my subjective interpretation, and
Yeah.
I want to address that.
Okay, before I turn it over to Sandy, because he is the guy with the degree and the stamp that I don't have, I want to make sure that you got the full submission that was sent, because I don't see it printed out right this moment. And what I did is I took the two elements that are in question, the storefront glass and the parapet, and I walked up and down Center Street, and I provided half a dozen or more photos, and I just want to make sure you saw
Yeah,
that.
I
Skip.
absolutely did.
Okay, good, because
I saw all
Okay,
of those parapet
good.
things.
Okay.
I also saw the single picture that was annotated that said parapet covering gable roof.
yeah, there's actually a couple different instances.
Well, but
of
you
that.
don't see the gable roof behind it in either one of those that I could see, so that the parapet actually covered up completely the design. And I don't know if that was added after the fact or when, but clearly they are old
Yeah.
structures.
Could I make a comment on that?
Please.
We're hipping the tops of these roofs back so that they will not be visible from the street. That's what this is indicating, a hip. And we hit this here as well, so that the peak of the existing gable is not visible. So I don't think you're gonna read anything but just the very ends of these rafter tails. You're not gonna read the roof above.
Okay.
So it is like a parapet without the roof behind it.
What about when you come in and you look at it from the angled side when you first approach coming across the bridge? You're looking across the boat landing area, the parking lot. You're entering now into Center Street after you clear the bridge. And now you look at, what do you see from that side there? I'm not an architect. I can't figure out exactly what that would show in terms of a visual look. If you can help me with that. To me, it's the parapet is not consistent with the rest of the roof design. But again, I'm not an architect and I might be looking at it wrong.
Well, the parapet will be tied into that gable on the front. And it's gonna turn, it's gonna have a thickness to it. It's also gonna go underneath the overhang. The overhang on this front roof is about 16 inches.
So
So
you're
it
talking
will,
about this overhang on the side here.
well, this overhang here, and the parapet is gonna be proud of this facade. And there will be a soffit under here that's gonna have downlighting on it.
Okay.
That's how we're gonna downlight the face of the building.
This is the view, the proposed,
But see what I couldn't understand,
Overall,
I didn't
right
understand how
elevation?
this view
yeah,
would look coming across the, I'm just looking for
Right.
consistency and not having it to give the appearance that it's a facade stuck on the front of a building that had a totally different look when it was built.
Well, I really don't think it's gonna look like that, because we're gonna tie it in, and we're thinking of maybe, wrapping this with a metal of some kind, maybe galvanized, metal, so that it has some presence to it. It's not just like a hardy plank board up there.
Right.
so that's, those kind of discussions is what we would, get to at final review.
Okay.
So we can ask for materials and colors at final review. So right now we need to decide if we are okay with our preliminary review of window sizes, the concept of the parapet wall, etc. And then we can definitely ask the applicant to bring samples or updating this rendering or whatever we need to visualize those aesthetics.
What I tried to do, Skip, was go up and down Center Street and show that there are lots of other buildings that have the same architectural elements. We're not really bringing a new element onto Center Street that doesn't exist. Right on City Hall, there's a massive parapet, there's storefront glass that goes all the way up down the side of it. I mean, it's just,
Okay.
this isn't anything really new, I believe.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
My concern was that we're taking an existing structure and we're changing the complete look of that structure. It's not like it's be a new build with a parapet wall that's consistent with the rest of Center Street. I'm just trying to make sure that, and I'll read you the part where it does apply to preliminary review out of the order a little bit, if you like, Katie, where it talks about the design needs to address the entire exterior envelope to the building so that it does not appear to just be a facade attached. And all I'm trying to do here is picture in my little feeble mind, because I don't have a three-dimensional view inside my brain housing group like you guys do. But I'm also trying to have us consistent with what the intent of the ordinance was. And I've read this thing, and I have the entire ordinance, not just the 5-page extract that summarizes. And I think you're not missing the point of how you define a commercial enterprise. I get that. It's the goal here from the new owner, as expressed by you in a previous meeting, is that he wants to expand the opportunity to not just have it be a lodge, but he'd like to have it be a revenue generating business, as it clearly can do. And I thought that by the accommodation of the, not garage doors, but the glass type doors, the side bar thing where we're using it as a walk up, and I think it's a great location to do that in a lot of respects, right there by the boat landing, open early and make sandwiches to go. I mean, that's going to it should be a big summertime draw. There are other issues that are not related to our purview here in terms of safety and parking, and all those come up in a letter that I'm sure you saw from Public Safety. But I'm just trying to make sure that what we are here is that the board feels like the change in the appearance to the front is consistent with what the intent of the order was, and does it meet the aesthetic appearance that it ought to, when we come on to Folly Beach. I mean, Ryan and I went through this ad nauseum with the old Fred Hollings building, because they had all different plans for that. And we fully agreed that that's kind of the way we always have looked at coming on to Folly, was Fred Hollings' thing. And we've compromised to a certain degree to accommodate, and that's working out over time. I'm trying to figure out where there is, or is there room to try to either better understand how this parapet fits, and is that the look that the board feels is consistent with what the existing building is, how it was accepted to be built when it was built. It is the first thing you see when you come on, and it was an attractive gabled building when you came on. So that was my reservation, and I fully get it from all your pictures. I examined them all. I've walked the street, I've seen them all too. Parapet are everywhere on Folly Beach. I get that. I didn't want this to look tacky, and I don't mean that in an insensitive word, but I don't want it to look like it was an afterthought to slap this on the front of the building, because now we want to accentuate that we're selling food, and not just a residence, not a full-time residence, but a lodge-type hotel. So that was my concern. I didn't think in the read ahead that was really addressed to what I was looking for. What I thought we had asked you to provide, and I realized that was a lot for you to do. That's why we also offered you the opportunity to wait for a later, if we wanted to push this meeting a little while, but you said it wouldn't be a problem. And from what you provided, in your perspective, it's not a problem. I was still trying to digest its consistency with what the order calls for and what are our obligations as a board to try to subjectively be in compliance with what the order is asking us to do, the ordinance is asking us to do, and at the same time protect us from any other type of, I wanted mine done like that one was done, and it was after the fact. We don't want to have that as a comeback for anybody else. To me, the whole dimension of Folly Beach is changing a little bit, because it's a different booming real estate market. There's new investors coming to the island. There's businesses that want to be here and can't find a spot to locate. And we're the first screening objective after zoning, and they determine that, okay, you can do with what you're proposing on the lot. We're the ones that are supposed to put a rubber, and not a rubber stamp, but an approval stamp on its appearance, and hey, is that a pleasing thing to come on board? Is it consistent? My only drawback is, at this point, is that this is not consistent with its original intent as we approved it.
Skip.
That doesn't mean it's wrong, doesn't mean you can't do it. I'm just saying that's what sticks first in my mind. Is that wrong? Did I say something wrong?
No, I just didn't know if we wanted, Mr. Kenter to weigh in, since he is
Oh,
also the
absolutely.
architect within the
Trust
board.
me, I'm not trying to dominate it.
No.
I felt like since I seem to have been the long pole in the tent here, I just wanted to clear that and let everybody know I'm not just trying to be a first class, you know what, but I really want to understand so that we can get the best of both worlds.
But before Alan speaks, just really quick, I just want to interject.
Sure.
You know, buildings are meant to change. Buildings are meant to change. This was once someone's residence. They lived there year round, full time. They operated the inn. It's not going to be that anymore. So, you know, we had a vision. Sandy had a vision with us to help us change the facade to where it, you know, made more sense commercially. Right now, it's kind of a dark lodge. You don't, you know, really notice it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reasons for the change. But I'm happy to hear what Alan's got to say as well, because he.
Can I make a few comments before he?
We're having discussion, certainly you can.
Yeah. When I worked with the original owners, she was very determined as to what she wanted this building to be. So she wanted it to be more of a residential feel. She wanted to feel like an inn or a boarding house at a fishing village, something like that. You know, it's got dark wood. She wanted it to look weathered, and that was their home. I mean, the upstairs, downstairs, on the front of the building is where they were planning to live, and they did the whole time they were there. And they had the rooms in the back that they rented. I quite frankly didn't feel like that the residential design was appropriate for that corner. I mean, it's sort of the gateway to Center Street. And I really tried to push her in a more commercial direction, but she was determined that's what she wanted to do. So we went that direction, adding the gables and windows. I would also like to say that the windows that I designed for this building were twice as big as what she put in. I've always thought they were way too small. They were not the right proportion for the scale of this building. So there were a number of things that changed that that were not like what I designed. But now it's going to be a hotel. It's not a residence. And we're having to go through an occupancy change because of that. So it's now a hotel. It's all rooms. It's going to have a restaurant downstairs. The entire ground floor is going to be painted a dark bronze color, and that's the color we're going to have on these overhead doors. A powder coated aluminum, dark color. And we also have the storefront on the right hand side where the entry and the bar is going to be for the restaurant. So it's going to be consistent. That material going around is going to be consistent. The aluminum, the storefront material. That's why I thought it would be a good idea to bring some of it up into the facade. And that's what I did. I think the color is going to be good. It's going to be consistent with the base. We have reduced it 35% from the first drawing we had. I had this glass facade all the way to the corners, but now you can see that what I've done is turn the corners with this hardy plank so that we reduce the width of these, and they're more vertical now, which I think works better with these doors. As far as the parapet, it is, like I was saying, it's going to be integrated with that face of the gable, and it's going to be proud of the building face, and lighting will come down from there. I can give you what we call a SketchUp model to show you what this building is going to look like from the corner. And it could be that when we get into studying exactly, we may want to return this on the corner somehow so it kind of ties in with this other gable. We're adding the stair, which will be another element that's going to make this building look a little different. So feel like we kept a lot of the elements that were original to the building, but by bringing this color and storefront material and glass, it's just going to give it a little bit more of a commercial feel, which I think is more appropriate when you first come on the island.
Well, yeah, it is, if that's the intent of the owners now, is to change its use. I mean, which it is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and you're right, I did fall off the pumpkin truck and I hit my head, but it wasn't yesterday. So I understand the buildings have to change and the uses change, because there are a few things that were on this island that are originally doing what they were doing when they were built to begin with. Even Wiki has changed, hasn't it, Alan, since we went through that entire thing forever. I'm trying to get that fast,
But we would like to
Okay.
request that you all give us conceptual so that we can begin studying this parapet.
well, conceptual's already been approved.
Okay, preliminary.
We're in preliminary at this
Preliminary.
point, and because preliminary does other things, the question became, is it consistent with the intent and use of the building when it was constructed? Because it does present a change in architecture from its existing state.
Right.
That's one of the criteria that we're supposed to evaluate, and
Sure.
that's what we're doing.
But I feel like as an architect, that change is appropriate for Center Street.
Well, I would like to hear, as Ryan would, Alan, do you have any architectural views, or you certainly know, and right now we're talking mostly
think
about
the,
the parapet roof. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think the storefront geometry looks a lot better now, because the line extending over from the porches is extending across, and the verticals, are kind of, those rectangles created by the storefront are pretty much the same size, aside from the 3 versus 2 geometry. So I don't have a problem with the storefront anymore, especially because it's bounded by the siding. My problem is the lack of integration. I don't think the parapet's integrated. I think it's because of the fact that it's protruding is distinctly unintegrated to the facade. I think it would look a lot better if it were pushed into the plane and the sides of the roof wrapped around and kind of hugged it. But that's just my, interpretation of looking at a bunch of the other parapets and stuff like that. I think it's kind of big to be protruding as a ratio of the other horizontal rectangles on that facade. If it was 16 inches tall in the width of the building and it protruded from the face, it'd be more, maybe expressed as a rectangular soffit extension. But what do you think about the option of lining the front of the parapet up with the facade and having the roof overhang either come out to the face or return back onto the face a little bit, not necessarily in a historical manner, but maybe in a beachy type manner, in keeping with the geometry of the roof overhangs that are on the building? I mean, I think that's one place that the old can intersect the new and kind of try to bring the facade in contact with the building on the rest of the geometry of the rest of the building together. You know what I'm saying? Just 10 or 12 inches kind of thing.
Yeah, Alan,
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with the parapet being flush with the face of the building. That's totally fine by me, but Sandy can speak to it as well.
Yes, I think your idea of pushing it back and letting the roof sort of come around it is a good idea. I think we can certainly study that and make that happen.
That's really my only problem with it now is the rectangular parapet protruding from the face, because I think you solved the problem of the storefront being drastically geometrically different, and now that the garage doors are there, in the same material and finish as the storefront, I think we were discussing whether when those windows went in, when they were first installed on the front of the building, I called Rick and asked if he had made a mistake, because I didn't remember us approving those windows, and we decided we looked at the windows incorrectly because they were shown with Bermuda shutters. And but I think they look like they were at least 20 to 30% smaller than what we had looked at. So, I think the storefront probably helped, given what those tiny punched openings that were there. And plus, there's a bunch of palm trees and stuff in front. So, I think part of the integration of the facade, regardless of the matching geometry, is maybe what happens to it with respect to the colors. Were you thinking that the colors would be vastly different than the rest of the buildings, or would the facade be the same?
We plan on turning the this color that we're showing on the front to the right-hand side of the building, but not to follow down where the porches are. But we're also going to add details like the color of the doors, and maybe the handrail, those kind of things will carry the same color out.
What was going to be galvanized? What part of it did we decide?
Okay, so before we get into colors, let's stay on our preliminary discussion, because that's kind of getting into
Color is
final.
an integral aspect to the geometry. If you have a stainless facade on a building and the rest of it's gray hardy plank, then that's two vastly different things. So the color
Right,
part
so
kind of plays a part
Alan-
with the materiality and the geometry here.
Right. So, Alan,
that's
we're gonna give Mr. Vandiver, an opportunity to speak on the preliminary aspects. Joe, do you have anything?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. And also some clarification on what Alan's saying. But Sandy, I think going back through the series of events through this review, I was probably the first guy to say, wait, okay? And so acknowledge, Ryan, buildings change, uses change, life goes on, right? The thing is, when you, in my feelings, when you buy something, you have it, then it's, okay, that's what you gotta work with, that's where you start. You don't start with a blank sheet of paper. And so one of my concerns about, well, I do think this is an improved look on the front because of the railing on the mullion lining up with the rail on the thing. I still think it's more consistent with the rest of the building if that, below that mullion were not glass. When I look down the side elevation of the building, when you see the railing that kind of cuts off all the door visibility, so it's all rail. So that's where I'm coming at from that. Is it more would be much more consistent with the balance of the building. Still accomplish, I think, enlarging the windows a lot, and I realize that and agree that the first windows were pretty modest, to say the least. So that's where I'm coming from on that, and still feel that way. I think it's an improvement. I think it would be more in concert with the balance of the building to do that. The facade parapet, what I'm having a hard time following the details of the conversation, if you're talking about sliding that back against the face, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happens to the hipped roof line at the top of the parapet? It just creeps back up. It just creeps back up. And so when we're talking about things coming around or over or through that parapet, what are we talking about? Or what were you talking about?
Now we're talking about these right here, right?
Yeah, he was talking about these kind of coming around and sort of integrating with the face
Mhm.
of this.
Mhm.
So that gable looks a part of this.
Mhm.
And we can show you all some
Yeah.
details.
I think for me, I think that is again anything you can do to add elements from the sides to the front, and the further comes improvement. I still am probably pretty kind of uncomfortable, and I hear what you're saying. It's perspective, where you're looking at it from. Hard for me to get my mind around that, but what I still picture in my mind is kind of two wings stuck out there, which if I just walk down the sidewalk here, you can almost see the back of it from over here on the sidewalk as you walk right out of this building. Okay, so that's my concern, is that is what gives it the false front look. Okay, and so Ryan, in the example that you pointed out of the little place next door to Mr. John's, if you could get around beside it and see it, it doesn't look very good, and I don't think it was a good idea just because it's there to recreate it. That's where I'm coming from. So I still have, sort of the same feelings about it. I wanted to just clarify where those were coming from in the context of those comments. And I think those are things that, are items we try to take it out of. To the degree you can, take all this out of the subjective realm, to try to qualify those comments in the language of these ordinances about false fronts and consistency with the balance of the structure. Renovation is never new construction, so you kind of handicap where you start.
Yeah. Well, let me speak to the glass under the mullion.
Mm-hmm.
I think if that becomes a solid element there, and we've got this wire, which if you really notice, it's just open. It's really not an opaque kind of feeling there on the railing. I think it's going to destroy the verticality that this is showing. We've got a lot of verticality with these doors, and I think if you can imagine that just being all party plank, the proportions are going to change. It's going to be more horizontal than it is vertical.
Right, understood. I guess I don't see that below the rail as being transparent. It's not completely opaque, so I don't, so there's also other treatment options other than just more hardy plank too. But anyway, that's to hear you.
Yeah.
That's where I'm coming from. Okay.
Ryan, any further discussion, or is is it, is there a solution that would include your windows kind of thing? You got the garage door things, which make it a commercial aspect, the new doors, I don't wanna call them garage doors. If you just didn't have a parapet, and, you know, I mean,
I'd be hard pressed to not, just because they're all over Center Street. If it was an element we were introducing that was brand new to the area, I'd say, yeah, I get it, guys, that makes sense, but.
Yeah, but there are gables all over Center Street too, so I mean, it's,
Well, there's tons of parapets too.
Right.
Which one is there more of? I mean, what's
it's
the
not,
big,
it's
what's
not
the
a
big deal?
It's
really?
not a,
It's
yeah.
not- It's like a big to do. It's kind of strange. I don't agree. This element's all up and down Center Street. I don't agree why
I don't-
it wouldn't be.
My objection has never been about a parapet. It's been about a parapet on the gable roof with the wings sticking out. Okay?
Well, I think what
That's been my
Alan,
objection.
what Alan's talking about is what I would say is a sort of return cornice.
Right,
See-
but that doesn't take that off.
Well, no, but it makes it integral with this front. It comes around, and what would happen is you've got a cornice, you've got the gable coming down, and then this, it's what you call a return cornice that comes and goes across. So I think that's what he's talking about, is let this integrate more with, with that, that piece.
And that
'Cause
cornice
it's gonna be back to
comes
that.
all the way across to make a little awning looking thing?
No, it wouldn't come all the way across, it would just be
A few feet.
partial.
Yeah.
Yeah, partial. Alan,
That's a
correct me if
good
I'm,
idea, Sandy.
correct me if I'm wrong on that, is that what you're sort of thinking?
Yeah, I was thinking about returning it, just like a foot or something, so that the roof overhang wraps the corners of the parapet and gives it some definition on the face. That might have something to do with the front setback and how close the front of the building is, because that wouldn't be possible if those would extend out over the front setback, I don't think.
No, I
But-
don't think it's that critical.
The other thing you just said is a good idea, is to cap. I think one problem visually with the parapet is the lack of anything on top. If you put a little something up there at the top, besides it being just horizontally, truncated like that, it might give it a little more definition. Maybe you could pick up something from the back of the building and express it on top of your parapet as another way to bring the geometries together.
That's an idea.
are you talking about then, like on some of the other ones on Center Street that have like a castle thing on the
We
front?
did look
It's
at
a little
one
bit
of-
of
yeah.
it breaks up the straight line look.
Well, I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about capping it off. But yeah, now looking down Center Street, in the center they have a rectangular bump, which might relate to the hip. Or there's a number of different geometries. Some of them are just straight and don't return, like the one on Jack and Cups. Just sticks up all by itself. And then some of the other ones return the corner. Sand dollars just sticking up by itself. So, yeah, I mean, my main problem was the protruding, was when it was out in front. But I think there's probably a couple options to look at with respect to its geometry and how it's terminated at the top that are opportunities for tying in the rest of the building.
Excuse me, guys. Can you guys hear me?
Hey,
Hi,
Hey,
Aaron.
this
We
is
can.
Aaron. Hey, thanks. I've been listening. Feels good not being in the building for a while, but I have been listening. And if you guys don't mind, I believe we've kind of reached a point where we're getting into that dreaded design by committee, live in person during a meeting. So I think it may be appropriate at this time. I think I've heard from all the board members on their opinions to call the vote for preliminary. And if we're going to get into designing the building, we've gone too far in our discussions.
yeah, I agree.
So could we maybe call the vote on preliminary? You've all had lots of time to think about it. You're either good with it or you're not. and then we can move on to final if needed, or try again for preliminary.
Right, so at this point, we would vote on preliminary with basically okay or not okay, a parapet and the windows and the preliminary design of this with final adjustments, colors, materials, at final, which I would assume would be at our next meeting, or a special meeting if we need to have it, before March. I will go ahead and call for a
So
vote.
can I ask a question? So
Yes, sir.
actually, I call for the roll. I call for the
Okay.
vote. So if we have a preliminary vote and we are then voting on the parapet as we see it in this image as being good or no good, right? Yes or no?
We are voting on the preliminary design of the parapet with knowledge that it could tweak and change with corners, wrapping, etc. But that a parapet will exist
In those-
approximately
in those-
to that
in
size
those
and
approximate
dimensions.
dimensions, okay.
But with corner wrapping and adding a step to it,
No overhang.
yeah.
Right, the detail will change from this. We will, for the final,
So,
have something.
in
that
other
will-
words, it doesn't necessarily have to be a straight across
It doesn't.
horizontal. It can have one of those many things that you pointed out in your pictures of some kind of a design breakup that doesn't make.
So we can
it
take those tall corners off in some fashion? Or we, I mean, that's what,
So
that's been,
We could do that
so,
during final.
but not
yes.
required to do so.
We are not required, but you would have to approve the final
during final.
design of this structure. That, the final would have to be approved. Whatever that final, your final might not look like Skip's final,
Right. I
might not
understand.
look like Alan's final, but
Right.
there will have to be a final approval of this. With
And
getting
guys, If
preliminary,
you could just
yep, Aaron?
bear with me one more time. This is the time that if you don't want a parapet wall on the building, vote so.
Yeah,
If your
you can vote
issue
no.
is with the parapet and with the change to a commercial look, now is the time to recognize that and vote no. Not come back next to the final and still say, oh, well, we're not comfortable with this changing from a residential to a commercial. When you approve the preliminary, you're approving the concept except for the details. If you are uncomfortable with the foundational concept of changing that front to a commercial front, now is the time to say no.
Okay, any other further discussion? Alan, do you have any discussion?
I'm good.
Joe, do you have anything else?
No.
Okay, Katie, call the roll.
Okay. Mr. Kenter,
Yes.
Mr. Fink,
Yes.
Mr. Vandiver.
Yeah.
Okay, the motion carries for preliminary approval of 87 Center Street.
Now, I would like to make one last comment,
Yep.
if I could. It's with the understanding that when we go to final, I would really appreciate you addressing the reservations that both Alan has identified, Joe's identified, and I've identified, so that while this is not the final shot here, that's not acceptable, okay? I mean, and I think you recognize
And I
that.
totally
I
understand
think
that.
you already
I've
get
heard
that, so I just want to make sure that,
And what I will do for the next submittal is do that SketchUp model on the corner, so it'll be a perspective that you can actually
See some
see
depth.
how all this works together.
Yep, okay. Mr. Chairman, I believe that our first new business will be deferred to the next meeting.
that's correct.
Okay. That has finished, for this meeting for 87 Center Street. Thank you so much for being here. You can stick around for the next discussion if you would like, or you can go home.
I think, huh?
You're good. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you all very much.
thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thanks.
I would like to, before we move into the other new business, please note for the record that Mr. Buck is now a voting member of the board, correct?
Sir,
You good with that?
vote on it.
Okay, so,
So we are gonna look at 108 and 112?
Yes. I have 112 on the agenda first. It's whatever you guys want to discuss. Doesn't matter to me. We do have Mr. Chris Altman on the line.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Mr. Chairman, would you like to, do you have any questions, or would you like for them
Yeah.
to just do their?
Before we, Mr. Altman, I'd like you to review with us, please, for the conceptual review portion of your agenda here. I am personally confused by some of the diagrams that are there. I think a couple of the references to some names of the streets might be incorrect as printed. I do know that one of your project areas that's outlined on an overview map is not all inclusive of the total lot that it is including, and that had me on my walkabout. So I was beginning to think, do I live here or not? And that was basically because some of the confusion for me dealt with whether or not there was demolition involved in your construction concept or your conceptual review for 112 East Huron.
Okay.
So as you make that presentation, if you could clarify any irregularities that you found in the drawings that you sent, or anything that you think you would like to point out particularly, I'd appreciate that.
Okay, I'm not aware of the discrepancy you're referring to, so I apologize. There will. Go ahead.
Nope, you're good, Chris. You can go ahead.
There will be demolition of an existing structure on this site. We did not include that in here. I wasn't aware that, I was assuming that was a separate process. But I guess overall concept of the project is two structures, one being, as you can see on the second page, there's a single residence facing East Indian Avenue, and then there is a duplex structure facing East Huron Avenue. Both structures are elevated with parking underneath and are 2 stories in nature, each having we basically call it a soaking pool in the backyard. Due to the zoning, we have a setback requirement of 15 feet on the page right side. That's on this side. The other side does not have that. If you go to the final 2 sheets, you can see the elevations of the building.
Can you tell us the page numbers?
Okay, page 14 and 15 are the elevations. You can see that it's a pretty traditional architecture from a style standpoint, looking to do traditional siding, lap siding on the facades, double hung windows, traditional hip roof, and exposed rafter tail roof trim. Below, we are proposing a wood, slat privacy area to screen the car.
You talking about A 2.2?
Or is this A 0.1?
I don't have a 14 or 15.
It should
I
be-
apologize. I'm looking at my PDF viewer, so it's labeled them differently. I'm talking about A 2.1 and A 2.2. I apologize.
Okay.
Sorry.
So can we back up one sec?
Certainly.
In the package that I'm looking at, A 0.2, your photographic overhead.
Mm-hmm.
So I see the box, I just want to make sure I get what we're doing is this lot that's got the box around it on East Huron,
Mm-hmm.
that's currently got a house on it, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so I think one of the things that Skip was referring to being confused by is it appears that box only covers a portion of that lot.
That's correct. I recognize what you're saying now. Yes, it does actually run from one street to the other street.
Okay,
Yes.
so,
That's-
The highlight area should have gone all the way to East Indian. I
That's
apologize
what I
for
was
that.
talking about, Kate,
I
earlier.
gotcha.
That- My walkabout, I was trying to figure, are we tearing down the Winters house, which was the issue, and I guess we are.
we are, okay, so that house that's on that end of that lot is indeed included in the project.
The entire parcel.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
So this is
okay.
a through and through lot, and one side of it will have the single family residence, and the other side of it will have a duplex.
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay. Press on, thank you.
No problem. Sorry for confusion.
And so from a zoning standpoint, this project does meet zoning compliance. The only thing that we have kicked to the fire department, is actually under 108. Just to make sure that access is wide enough for the driveway, since it's about 12 feet on one end. But we can tackle that when we get there, so we can stay on 112. 112 has that public beach access, that 10-foot right of way, so it is good from an egress right of way standpoint. I talked with our building official and our fire official for that. So from a zoning standpoint, parking, lot coverage, all of those calculations check out for 112. So at this point, our discussion should just be conceptual. If we are okay with knocking down that structure with the demolition, that would be approved under this conceptual, as well as building the single family and duplex on one lot.
So the image on sheet 2 of 4, I can't see any other identification.
Yeah, that shows the existing structure, I believe. Yeah.
Except it doesn't show the little shack or building, whatever, behind that, right? I mean,
All of it's got to.
is that all one structure? And they operate that rental business out of the back?
Yeah.
So it's all one structure? Oh,
But the whole thing's coming down, is that right?
okay, I got it.
Everything
Okay, I
on
didn't
that,
realize it
on
was
that
all
lot
one
will
building.
be demolished, yes.
Thank you.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Do we have to consider the age of that structure per the zoning rules, or do we not have to worry about that?
Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't have any historic structures. Duties of the board do give some weight to historic or existing structures, but from a definition standpoint, we don't have any historic structures on Folly. Correct, Aaron? He's with us.
There's something about the age with respect to 50 years. That's what we went through with Fred Holland. But I don't think that thing,
This isn't anywhere near that,
No.
I don't think.
yeah, it's not. I don't think it is. And I think that typically goes to council. I think they kicked that decision to us as a one-off last time. I think we lost Aaron.
I don't know if Aaron, he might have,
He's on mute. He just took it off.
I can hear him snoring.
Aaron asked, is he muted? Speak up again, Aaron, let's see. Aaron Stransky, he's not muted, correct?
No, he's not.
Okay.
He was a minute ago. He's not now.
Okay. Aaron says he's talking, but we cannot hear him, unfortunately.
So, having been through a long drawn-out process laying out parking lots with the City of Charleston Design Review Board, I'm looking at, without having any math in front of me, looking at the drive and the turns into those parking places.
Yes, sir.
Have those all been looked at by?
Our building official, who is also a fire marshal, looked at that and says that this one is fine because there's that 10-foot right-of-way and that maneuverability is okay. For 112, I believe.
Right.
So they can back into the right-of-way, is that what he said?
Correct, yes. Yes. The other one has an issue because there's not a beach access, but it might not be an issue. We have kicked it to fire to see for a courtesy review. Is there,
The conceptual review, they've really met everything that's required here, really, especially if his intention is, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, your intention is to just raise that entire lot. And then the conceptual drawings that you've given us are to have a single family dwelling on one side and then the duplex on the other.
That is correct.
We need to make a motion, I think, for conceptual.
that is correct. We do not have any motions on the floor.
And Hey guys, I apologize. Can you guys
Hi.
hear me now?
Yeah, Aaron, we can hear you.
All right, sorry. So in terms of historic protections, we have a rule for demolition permits about the cost of permits. It raises the cost for a building that's over 50 years old, but we have no formal protections beyond that. So there's no special charge to the DRB or special rules related to the demolition and your approval. It's just that if you approved it and if it was over 50 years old, it would cost more to tear it down than it would.
Thank you, Aaron.
Can we go to a motion to approve the conceptual?
Moved.
Second.
We call a roll, if you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Kenter,
Yes.
Mr. Fink,
Yes.
Mr. Buck,
Yes.
Mr. Vandiver.
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. Okay, so now we can go to preliminary review, where we would look more closely at the.
Oh, I thought we were just voting on whether to discuss it or not. We were voting on conceptual?
No, yes, we were voting on conceptual. Did you want to back up? Do you have discussion that you wanted to make? I thought we had answered all the questions.
I thought we were supposed to make a motion for conceptual before discussion.
No, we don't have to do that. The motion was to approve conceptual review.
Okay.
Would you like to change your vote?
Is the form of the buildings included in conceptual, or is it just site circulation?
Is the what of the building? I'm sorry.
The form of the building.
The form?
Conceptual review, the documentation it's a schematic site plan illustrating the proposed footprint within the parcel boundaries, proposed access and exterior circulation, approximate basic dimensions, and all trees that are subject to protection under the tree ordinance, and none apply here. But it's a basic sketch of the elevations, which he's provided,
Righto.
and that's it. And then we move into preliminary if you're satisfied with those items have been met. I thought they had been. I'm sorry, Alan, if you had any comment, that was on me. I did not call for a motion to discuss or to address conceptual review. I just called for the vote.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Now, I would like, before we move into
Sure.
preliminary, let's call for a motion to,
Entertain it.
Well, let's not call for a motion. If we're not going to do that, let's keep it consistent. Right.
That's fine.
Okay.
So we can have a discussion on preliminary review, which would pertain to the site plan, everything that conceptual did, plus elevations, entrances.
Driveways, parking areas, sidewalks, things of that nature. So, Alan, would you have any, why don't you open the discussion on the preliminary review, Alan?
I think I don't really mind the simple nature of the buildings, but I think they're too boxy and, for instance, the basic box, which is broken up by a porch, still has 100%, well, except for that porch, it has the same fascia height the whole way around. And I think it's a little bit, partially because there's two of them on the same lot.
There's not a lot of architectural detail, and they're very similar, right? But are we
Yeah,
considering
the
that now?
architectural detail is, I'm not a huge proponent of cake decorating a box, but I think, the simplistic nature is not necessarily the problem. I have a problem with their form, so to speak, because I think I think they're too boxy and massive. I think they need some articulation in maybe the roof and or an expression of one-story bumps or something like that in order to give them, you know, some relief from that large box, because I think that's prominent in the, you know, especially when you look at them in the model view, even though it's from up in the air.
Right.
And then the other thing that kind of goes along with that is the shutters.
So Ellen, or Katie, is that what we're considering now? in
So
this
that's what
preliminary?
that's what I would like Aaron.
Or conceptual? I don't,
Right. So are these design elements with porches, shutters, etc.? Would that be more of a final approval, Aaron, or would that be more preliminary?
So can you hear me?
Yes.
So in conceptual, you approved the basic mass and footprint.
Correct.
Preliminary, you would refine that. If you want differentiations in the facade, more extrusions, whatever you want, more glazing, that sort of thing, that's for preliminary. Whether you want shutters or not, it's preliminary. What color the shutters are, what material the shutters are, that's final.
Does that help?
It's
Ish. Yeah.
We're not necessarily nailing down final colors and whether this hardy plank is smooth versus wood grain, but we are nailing down, I want more articulation in the facade, I want varied roof pitches, I want overhangs, etc.
so that is a part of the conceptual review.
Of
No,
preliminary.
you guys were on
Preliminary.
preliminary review.
Okay, but we're in conceptual.
No, we've
Yeah.
approved.
No, you
we're
voted on
preliminary.
conceptual.
Okay, sorry.
You're okay.
So,
Sorry.
so I just want to make sure that I understood correctly that you guys are voted on conceptual, right?
Conceptual is approved. Yes.
Yep. So conceptual approved the idea of this duplex over here and this single family house over here, this driveway here. Now you're just going to refine those details and get to the exact shape, size, orientation, that sort of thing.
So to recap, what Mr. Kenter has said is that more variation between the structures as well as more architectural details such as porches would be desired. Is that correct, Alan?
No, I was talking about the form of the buildings and their basic rectangular boxy shape.
And that's appropriate for now. So if
Right,
you
so-
think
okay.
this plain box is not what you want, you would vote no. And say, come back next time with a box that steps in and out, that articulates different forms. That's completely appropriate for preliminary review.
And we voted for preliminary review? We haven't.
Brian, do you have any comments?
I actually agree with Alan. I think it does need a little bit more interest. I don't, you know, what I don't care for would be like shutters that are flat up against the building that don't at least look like they operate, things like that. The buildings are so similar. You know, I do think it just needs a little bit more interest to try to shave off a little bit of the boxiness. I know they're, you know, obviously trying to maximize it, and I just think there's some ways of maybe disguising that or just helping it look a little bit more architectural.
Joe, any comments?
Agree. Yeah, if they're big and boxy, there's gonna be 4 in a row. Right?
There will be.
Yeah, I mean,
There.
can I respond to that or?
No, please, Chris, please do.
Okay, I'm sorry. I understand what you're saying. I mean, the challenge we're running into is just the sites are tight. And in order to get the functionality inside, it's difficult to just pull and, you know, make big moves of breaking the mass up to make it work. I mean, particularly in the duplexes, the plans are pretty efficient plans. And I think we're kind of challenged to get it on the site as it is.
In the future.
Yeah, I mean, the buffers and, I mean, not the buffer, but the setback, you know, is really, on this site anyways, has really pinched us down. If we could get some relief from that, I think it would help, but I'm not sure we can do that.
I mean, we can't really tell you how to do it, but
Yeah. No, I'm not expecting to. That's fine.
yeah, it's
So Can you guys hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, we can hear
Yeah,
you.
we hear.
So one thing to keep in mind from the applicant's point of view is that you have a theoretical maximum volume dictated by the zoning parameters. That theoretical maximum volume isn't necessarily your guaranteed right in terms of massing and size. So if this building built to a box that maxes out zoning dimensions is inappropriately masked, out of context for the site, etc., the board could say, hey, come back with a smaller building that's interesting versus a flat box that maximizes your zoning. So that's one thing to keep in mind. When we say the site is tight, is the site tight, or are we maxing out our theoretical zoning box?
Well, anytime, let's say you were to want a one-story element to break up a facade and you pushed out the cantilever joist a foot and a half or whatever, and that created a 16 square feet somewhere on that facade, may or may not help the room. It wouldn't affect the pilings or the turning radius or anything like that because it wouldn't affect the foundation. Then, if you're maxed out, that 16 square feet has to come out of some other portion of the building. So it becomes a push me, pull you math exercise
Yeah.
if you're at the max. And it's imperative.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Pat Marr. I'm the contract purchaser, and I think one of the things that we tried to do, and that we looked at what was approved up on East Erie Avenue, where they have single family, and then one lot has two duplexes, 4 units, and we tried to, get rid of doing 4 units and just having 3.
Okay, excuse me, just for a point of clarification, and I believe you and I have exchanged emails and phone calls about that. That is 2 lots. Each one is entitled to 2 units. That is not 4 units on one lot.
Got it.
Just for point of clarification.
I guess I was really more trying to bring up the fact that if you look at those units, they're fairly, tall and boxy. So that's why I think, we tried to do something that was not in line with that, but using that kind of as a base case.
This is very tall and boxy.
Do we have any other discussion for preliminary review from the board? Okay, we have no motions on the floor right now. We can make a motions for either approval or another ask from our applicant.
Chris, let me ask a question of you.
Sure. Okay.
I'm familiar with a single-family residence, for example, where the lot dimension size did limit the amount of footprint, literally, that the ground floor had. The second floor, however, extends out, as Alan alluded to, with a cantilever room that made the actual living space on the second floor quite nice, but yet they were well within the boundaries of the lot footprint. I don't know if that's a architectural type of design that was unique for this particular property. It's not in the commercial zone, but it was a unique building concept, and it made really good use of the lot size, and at the same time afforded them a significant improvement in their square footage, their livable space. I don't know if that's anything that would be in your thought process or not, to mitigate the idea that you're trying to maximize the vertical space here of the footprint. Did that make any sense?
Yeah, it made sense. I honestly hadn't thought about cantilevering. It's not what I would consider a very traditional method of architecture, but one of the things I would just point out is that we're not maxing out our area for buildings per the zoning. In fact, I think we're fairly under it. It's just once you start, trying to get livable space to work in there and stuff, it just kind of adds up. But I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure that the cantilever is probably the right here, because I don't know that that's just thinking through in my mind, I hadn't thought about this too long, but I'm not sure that it would solve what we're trying to accomplish here.
I'm not recommending you take that approach necessarily. I just made an
Sure.
observation that has been a unique design that has worked on a limited size lot.
Sure, that's definitely a unique approach. Doesn't hurt to look at it.
Chris, maybe consider doing some eyebrows, or maybe doing something with the siding to break it up. I mean, I know everyone's
Okay.
doing everyone's doing the board and batten and the lap. Doesn't necessarily have to be that, but I think it really screams a big box with not a lot of architectural interest, and I don't think you need to go overboard necessarily, but
Okay.
just try to dress it a hair more. I mean, in my mind, dress it up a little bit more.
So the max lot coverage for downtown commercial is 50%, and that's what this property is zoned for. And the actual lot coverage for this project is 47.6%. Just so everyone knows that.
Yeah, it doesn't look very, I mean, the treatments, there's tails, exposed tails, but then kind of historical looking columns. It's not looking like something that you'd build on Folly Beach right now. You know what I mean? It looks like something that might be on the edge across the river from downtown, kind of with a semi-historical, I mean, it's got a enlarged frieze with a trim band underneath it. And then I guess those are Tuscan columns.
Right. I understand what you're saying.
So not really funky, beachy at all. And maybe that's not what I was alluding to with the breaking up of the mass of the box, but that is something to think about. And the sidings, like Ryan was saying, that can help do some of that stuff. But I think it's part and parcel to, and at one point, like you're alluding to, at one point you have no choice. That sticks out anyway. Maybe think a little bit funkier. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Away from the simplistic, historical, default kind of thing.
Any
All
more
right.
discussion on preliminary? Okay, we have no motions on the floor.
I mean, I guess we see where the, where the DRB is headed on this, and maybe for preliminary, we go ahead and withdraw our application and come back with revised.
I'm not sure what to do. Should we vote on it, or how do?
So you guys can make a motion to ask the applicant to come back with a design that is more interesting and less boxy, that fits the nature of Folly, and then we kick it to the next meeting.
Okay, so we don't necessarily need to make a motion to vote, because we've already.
We wouldn't, correct, we do not need to make a motion to approve or deny, but we can make a motion to say this is what our ask is of the applicant.
Okay, that sounds good. What you just said summed it up nicely.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay.
It'd be nice also if you could provide an address of how you quote define a Folly residence.
Oh, that's the whole essence
item.
of the board, Pat. I think that's up to Chris to give some design elements. Like Aaron said previously, we're not going to design within this meeting.
No, I understand. I just meant, some kind of, something you guys have liked, that what you've,
A reference, I guess.
referenced.
Some,
Because
examples.
when you say something of like, the architecture of Folly, I mean, yeah, we can go, I mean, Folly's very varied. There's lots of different kinds of architecture. So,
I think that's the point.
That is a very good point. Yeah.
I think that's the point, but also I think, especially to Ryan's comment, the large surface area of siding with no interruptions is something that something we're trying to figure out a way to describe to you some possibilities to get a
Yeah,
more
no,
interesting.
I think we hear,
Yeah.
you know, I hear enough to be able to go back and take a look to try to make it, you know, more interesting and appealing to DRB and to others on the island, certainly.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Okay.
we'll take another look. We're not trying to make this a,
That's a great,
Yeah.
that's a
you know,
great attitude.
single-family house out in Monk's Corner in some next-in development. That's not what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, do
Yeah.
I have a
Said it
second
well.
for the motion on the floor? Thank you.
And I apologize if anybody's from Monk's Corner that I've slandered their family.
Well, I'll give you a hint, you have to be a resident of Folly Beach to be on the design review board, so there you go.
Yeah, I meant your family. I don't want to insult your
Oh,
family.
no, it's,
Okay,
Gotcha.
do we have any other discussion for the motion?
I do not. You can call.
Okay, Mr. Pinter,
Yes?
Mr. Fink,
Yeah.
Mr. Buck, Mr. Vandiver.
Sure.
All right, that motion passes to have the applicant bring back something with more character and varied design that is in line with Folly Beach architecture.
And Katie, what is that date? Come back.
So our next regularly scheduled board meeting is, please hold,
Should be the 15th.
should be the 15th of March because February and March mirror each other. We might have a special meeting between now and then. We have some other interests that came up this past week for another project that we might need to get in the next couple of weeks, depending on what comes before us. So I will keep you guys updated with that. We need to go through our process for 108 East Hudson while we have you guys here. I don't know if the board wishes to do the same that they did for 112.
If you look at it, it's the same building, it's half of 112.
Yeah,
So-
exactly.
It's the same.
Yeah, can we just take that, I would recommend to you that we take 108 East Hudson and we delay that also and we can move right into conceptual with that after you've given us. or we could
With
do
with this comment that you're gonna be building 4 structures within sight of each other,
Yeah,
some variation between 4 structures would be desirable.
Correct. Which is what we
Or-
want. So
Right.
do we want?
My-
In other words, that they all not be more interesting but alike.
Well, do we need to
I
improve,
understand.
do we need to improve can we approve the
That was going to be-
conceptual for 108?
correct.
Yeah,
That was
that's-
going to be my ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to, let's move into a conceptual review of 108 East Hudson. And I won't ask for a motion to consider for consistency of the board, Alan Kinner. And we'll just open it up for discussion. Alan, do you have any opening comments, sir, for 108?
I accidentally closed it. Go ahead. I gotta go find that, document again.
Mr. Buck or Mr. Vandiver, do you have any discussion on 108? Or you don't have to have any.
Well, again, what has been submitted, just like the documentation submitted for 112, it meets the conceptual review requirements.
Correct. It's just if you guys are okay with having 112 and 108, having a single family and a duplex, so it's 4 structures, as Mr. Vandiver's stated, within those proximity. Not looking at design, not looking at aesthetics, but having those footprints and those uses. That is what the board should be voting on right now.
No,
Or
108 is
discussing.
2 duplexes, it's not a single.
And a single family, yes, sir. It's the same exact project. So 112 is,
No. I was under the impression, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, I thought that one lot was a duplex and a single family and the other lot was 2 duplexes.
No, they're both a combination single and duplex on each site.
Then all things considered, your conceptual review for one should be essentially the same considerations that they were for the other.
That's correct. Yeah.
I'm totally confused.
They're the exact same size lot and the exact same, zoning,
Yeah.
commercial zoning.
Oh, there are 2, I see. I thought we were talking about 2 different street addresses. So,
Well, they are different
are.
street addresses, but they're across the street from each other. the same zoning.
So one,
Okay,
so,
but
yeah,
they don't show up on the same page anywhere.
because they're two different parcels. They're catty-cornered from each other. They're across the street diagonal from each other. So 112 has a parcel number of 32810000018, and 108 has a parcel number of 32814001119. So they're, one is right next to Lowlife, and the other is
Right across from the back of the post office.
from the post office. I might have given you a wrong.
Correct, yeah, right next to the post office.
Well, essentially, both these lots, Alan, if I understand it, are through lots. They have they abut two streets,
Correct.
and they're building
You're correct.
four structures, each of which has a street frontage.
Correct.
So for me, Chris, for my opinion,
Mhm.
this is Joe, you're building 4 structures in close proximity. I would love to see 4 different looking structures.
We just quadrupled your work, didn't we?
Yeah, it's
Well, I also think that, you know, you have 4 different streets. I mean, there's 2 different two blocks from the
Yeah.
East Indian frontage all the way up to the
Hudson.
East Hudson. You know, I mean, those things are not near each other. But I do understand with the units that are on Huron, either on the north or south side,
Correct.
that, you know, something be done there.
Okay,
What
but
I
then,
would-
then as you look at the other, I can't remember the address you used as an example, that you sort of modeled this on, but if it's somebody across the street, you know, think about that, right?
Yeah.
where my mind was going is if you're on Huron, that's the one street where you'll see both projects simultaneously, right?
Correct.
To me, the incumbency here is to make sure that those 2 facades don't look anything alike to each other.
Correct. I agree.
The two structures that are on the polar opposites of those will never be seen, you know, next to each other or at the same time. So,
They'll just be
I-
seen in proximity to what's already there.
right, I think to me the key is making sure when you're coming down Huron that you're not perceiving these 2 projects as being same, right? That those 2 facades of those buildings that are facing that street look different.
Yep.
Right.
So from a conceptual standpoint, are we okay with the duplex and the single-family structures on 108 East Hudson?
Right.
Can you comment on the Huron, the bordering buildings? If you're standing on the Huron side of 112 and you look over at the other lot, catty corner, will one of those be a duplex and the other one be a single family? I'm a little bit.
That's the way it's set up right now, so that you don't have a single family facing a single family, or you don't have a duplex facing a duplex. They are kind of flipped, so you don't, you know, so we have that kind of working to our advantage.
And that makes
Right.
sense to me. But Alan, I'm not an architect.
Well, I mean, I think it's, you know, you could probably differentiate those facades, you know, without even changing the floor plan, because you have so many elements on the end, the hip, the shape of the roof, you know,
Right.
which isn't a huge structural thing, the shape of the porch roof, its protrusion, and maybe even the configuration of the stairs and whatever that stuff's doing. I think you could probably differentiate those without even making separate floor framing plans and whatnot. You know what I mean?
That's where my mind's headed. I think we can solve it without doing drastic changes to a floor plan.
So
Yeah.
you don't have to have all those separate sets of drawings.
Correct.
We'd like to have 20-foot privacy fence on the side so we don't have to look at 150 golf carts next door.
Well, that would be a tricky variance to get, but I think, you know, bamboo and palm trees, once they fill in, make a
Oh, no, our landscape guy is very excited about that challenge.
Yeah, they need to be.
One of the things that is, kind of catching us, if you see on the elevations, we're very close to the max height due to the flood map change. So that's something we're hoping gets rectified in its processes. I think that would help allow us a little bit of more freedom when it comes to how that roof gets formed.
Do
But
we
right now,
know, I think council is in discussion on an adjustment there.
they are, but it's not, from my understanding, it hasn't passed yet. So we're having to work with the current or the new flood maps until that passes.
Which probably
Okay.
won't be till April or May.
Right.
Well, Chris, are you guys all right with coming back then at the 15th, March 15th, rather than any special meeting we might hold?
That's probably realistic. Yeah, I would think so.
Okay.
Special meeting.
Is there
Yeah,
any further
I'm not sure when
discussion
it's
about
gonna come.
conceptual
14
review
weeks.
for 108?
When is the special meeting scheduled
It
for?
is not,
If you think you'll be having it, you were
Yeah.
talking 2 weeks?
it is not scheduled yet. It depends on another applicant to see if we could get an agenda that would be worthy of a special meeting.
Well, and then also that date has to be we got to make sure we can get a quorum of people
Correct,
that are
so
available here that are used to.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we close on the properties on March 15th, so love to see if we can get approvals done by then. But, we can work with y'all.
Sure.
You can tell Jamie Wilson to give us another week.
Are you all, we're in consideration for 108 conceptual, is that what we're doing right now?
That is correct. And if there's no more discussion, we can vote on that, Alan, unless you have any further discussion, or Ryan or Joe, anybody?
I'm good.
Alan, would you call the roll, please?
Well, we do not have any motions on the floor currently.
Okay, well, the motion is to approve the conceptual review for 108 East Hudson. Second. However,
Yes.
call the roll.
Okay. Mr. Kenter,
Yes?
Mr. Fink,
Yes.
Mr. Buck,
Yes.
Mr. Vanderwerf.
Yes.
Great. Well, we appreciate your feedback, and we'll be back in 2 to 4 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So what is the
Yes.
net effect of the thing on the height and the flood map? So the new elevation map's lower,
Correct.
right? So,
So we had a discussion with council in our work session last Tuesday about taking max height limit, instead of it being anchored by BFE, base flood elevation, with 36 feet up. Since we have a 2-foot freeboard, you kind of lose that. So we would take it at the first living floor, so the floor that you walk on, with 34 feet up. So what that means is people they have their set box of 34 feet, and they can move it up or down
with the BFE.
with the move it up or down independently from the BFE, with the minimum
Yeah.
being the freeboard requirement and the maximum being 50 feet above grade, which is tied to our fire code. So you wouldn't have which most residential structures aren't going to be taller than 50 feet. But it would allow you to drive under and park under the house and elevate without squashing that max heated square footage. So that's our intent. Council was favorable to that discussion last Tuesday, so now I have to write the ordinance language, make sure that it fits everywhere. It will be remanded, most likely the planning commission. They will vote on it, then we'll go to 2 readings to council, March and April. Could have a snag in there, so I'm just saying May.
Here, you done with us?
We're done with you. Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Pat.
Thank you, gentlemen, appreciate it.
Good night.
Good night.
One thing that comes up repeatedly in dealing with different municipalities' height restrictions is the interpretation of average grade, whether it's pre or post fill, slab height, and it gets kind of crazy. I think that's
so this
why.
is tied to the road, to the center line of the road. So we
Oh,
wouldn't
that's
actually
done?
be dealing with grade at all.
So that's a frame,
I missed
that's a
it.
reference.
Are you tying it to the road? Oh, that's cool.
Yes, that's based out of our fire code. And so the max height of the structure would be 50 feet from the center line of the road.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, that works. That takes all the arguing out.
yeah.
Alan, any idea how tall my house is?
It is 78 feet from the center of the road.
Gotta take that third level off.
It's high.
Yeah, you're gonna lose your top floor
You're gonna have to take
next
it off.
month.
We wouldn't make you do that, don't worry.
Can, as far as staff comments go, Katie, I know you want to introduce the fact, or at least everybody for review, that they do have a letter from public safety concerning parking at the boatway.
Yeah,
The only other thing I have, since it's just us here now, it's just the council members,
correct.
can you allude at all to what this other special meeting might be about?
So Bert's has some potential work that they want done. They're talking about an order window from the outside of the building that could be accelerated review. Julia's supposed to be getting those documents to me. However, we had to put a stop work order on for some additional work that they were doing on the site that encroached on their 15-foot setback from the parcel next door that they own, as well as some max lot coverages. So they're trying to fix that. So that may come to the board, but right now
Isn't that outside of the commercial zone that we're supposed to, the
They are
DRB is
not.
supposed to consider?
They are the furthest parcel that is in the downtown commercial
Oh,
zone.
it is, okay.
Yes.
I thought it was cut off at Second Street.
No,
I guess
they're the exception that extends over.
Always
So,
accepted.
yes, we would, if Bert's has some stuff that they need to do, unsure about the scope of what that is, they may need to go to planning commission first, they may go to BZA first. But it's definitely looking like they wanna do an order window at accelerated review.
I'll make a motion for the walk-up window at Bert's accelerated review. Just kidding.
Okay, well, thank you.
Did it get seconded?
Okay, Katie, any other commission comments or staff comments? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's all I have.
No citizen comments. Next regularly scheduled meeting is the 15th.
Correct.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Sounds good. See you later.
See you, Alan.
All
Bye,
approved.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Alan. See ya.
Bye.
Aaron, can you stop streaming us, please?
6 o'clock, right?
On the
15th is
15th.
always third,